here, or is it needed?
What is it?
Just to put my keyboard in.
Yeah. You logged in as marketing community manager. I need to log in as you.
If you go into Safari, it's already logged in as me.
Okay.
I've only got it logged in as community manager and everyone.
Has anyone joined yours?
Not yet.
No, I mean, that's full. So there's no way of
Is it really?
getting into it.
Did it work this morning?
Sorry? Well, worked this morning because I created an on-air.
I see. Is that not what you created just now, or?
Now I've created an on-air, but I'm trying to get back into the old sessions to tell people to go to the new one.
Oh, right, okay.
But they're all full.
Post to the wall, I think that's probably the best.
I've already done that.
Okay. I'll copy paste the link again just to make sure you've got the right one. But... Three viewers, this does look like it's about to, looks like it is working now.
I'll try and get into the other ones. And how are you doing for numbers?
13.
Okay. So we're getting there.
Okay, folks, we'll get going very shortly now. Okay, folks, we're going to start in just 1 more minute.
I'm going to leave.
Okay, I'm going to get us going now. Our apologies again for the slight technical mix-up. We do appear to now all be here in the functioning correct webinar. So good evening and a very warm welcome indeed to all of you. This is our first ever Global Jam, so I'd like to add my welcome to that of Ben's this morning. The purpose of this event is to spend 48 hours, which started in the morning UK time today, to get involved in testing and improving and stabilizing the live code releases that we've got, in particular live code 7, but also live code 6.7 as well. Over the course of the day today, we've had the live code team on hand to replicate and fix bugs throughout the day. They've fixed over 20 issues, I believe, over the course of the day. And over the weekend, the jam will be manned by volunteers, and when the team comes back in next week, there'll be a further blitz on anything that you guys come back and report. We have posted a new build right now in the last few minutes, 7.0 DP5, with all of the fixes that we did over the course of the day today. So go and check that out. We built it fairly rapidly, so hopefully it works reasonably well, but it is up there now and you can go and get it. The purpose of this evening's webinar is so that you can ask me anything, and as such I'm going to keep this intro fairly short. So go ahead and start using the questions box, and when I get to the end of my intro there'll be a few questions up there that I will start digging into. I'd like to say a few words before we move over to questions on where we are overall at the moment. As many of you are aware, it's been an absolutely enormous effort to get us to version 7. I said it before, I think in a blog post a few weeks ago, and I'll say it again. It's the majority of the effort against the Kickstarter goals that we've had, but it's probably a minority in terms of the amount of benefit it brings to users. And indeed, it's even a negative for some users because we've had to pause so many features whilst we get this architectural project done. However, it will be an enabler for so many more. It is starting to shape up to be quite a robust, solid release. It will make all of the other goals that we have planned that much easier to implement and deliver. And so I'd like to say a huge thank you to everybody that's been involved in shaping that release, in providing feedback, and also a huge thank you to everybody for your patience as we brought that release together. Once we get through this release and start looking at the releases that are coming up, we're going to be doing some things that are a bit more visual. One of the things that vexes me slightly is that even after all of this effort, live code looks largely similar to how it did a year ago. And over the next few months, some of the projects have got a bit more eye candy associated with them. The themes project, work on the IDE, the widgets project, these are all very exciting things. The team has started, some of the members of the team have now actually started on those projects, which is a testament to the fact that we're starting to get into a pattern and it's starting to settle down the amount of work that's left to stabilize out the builds that we have going on at the moment. There is a huge amount of new stuff in 7 to test, and it's not surprising that it's taking quite a while to get it truly stable. I guess my favorite features are the new true word, sentence, and paragraph chunks, the right to left text, and being able to use Unicode in the script editor, something that is not very common in programming terms. Most languages don't allow you to write your variable names in Unicode, unlike Code now does. And we've been trying out that Unicode not just over here, but also in China, where we've been using the new Unicode engine in a workshop series, a pilot for a series of workshops, over 60 or so different students. They actually absolutely loved it. It's working very well, and we're going to be scaling up that program in the coming months. Even without the themes and without the eye candy that's all coming up fairly shortly, we've seen our site traffic grow by 2.5 times since summer last year. And we've seen our active users are a bit more than 3 times the level that they were pre the open source in April last year. So the user community is growing very steadily. And I just want to say again a huge thank you to everybody in the community for being there and supporting us. It really is this wonderful community that we have that motivates all of us here at Runruck more than anything else, any other reason for doing this. A couple of quick reminders before I turn it over to your questions. We do have the new summer camp starting on Tuesday. If you haven't signed up for that, it'll be a fantastic opportunity to learn in a bit more depth about some of the features that we have coming up. We've got some of the really geeky members of the team worked on those features, having to prepare some of the content for that course. So if you want to get into depth, that's an excellent opportunity to do that. And a reminder about the conference that we have coming up in September. It's going to be a great opportunity to mingle and meet all of the people in this community and put names to faces for those of you that are new. And the theme of the conference will very much be around themes. We'll be working with the new widgets, architecture and prototypes, and you'll get a chance to get your hands on that probably for the very first time. I'd like to say a very special thanks to Richard Gaskin, who came up with the idea for hosting this Global Jam. It's been a truly wonderful day today. The whole team got together. I think it's fair to say it's been quite an enjoyable process. It's been great to see the progress that we've been able to make on all of the issues that got reported over the course of the day. So thanks for your support. Thanks for your patience in participating in this Global Jam. And I guess on a personal note, thanks even for the beard. As you can see, I still have it. You might say that it has grown on me. So I did say this evening was about questions. I'm going to hand it all over to you. I see that we have some questions popping up already. So let's take a look at this first one. Select. Okay, so a question here from Colin Holgate. Aside from the nobleness of the Kickstarter campaign, there was a hope that the increase in numbers would lead to more commercial license holders and therefore more money coming into RunRev. How is that working out? Commercial license sales are not doing as well overall, I would say, as the growth in our overall community. But that said, we did project that that would be the case in the early months. We have a lot of users who are educators who've moved over to the open source community, or people that are only needing a commercial license intermittently. And we factored that into all of the modeling that we did. So if you ask me that question again in a few months' time, hopefully I'll be able to tell you that it's on track. It's doing well enough at the moment. Let me scroll down this list of questions. Some Rob commenting, Ben, if you built this in live code, you wouldn't have had any problems. Off the chat, might be true. Okay. Okay, question here. What is the live code strategy to play and control multimedia, audio and video on every platform? At the moment, we're busy working on the Mac platform to complement the Cocoa port that we've just done in 6.7. So we're moving over to AV Foundation. And AV Foundation is implemented differently from QuickTime. So we're having to do quite a lot of work to support the same feature set that we had in the QuickTime implementation. However, once that's done, it does lay the groundwork for us to update the frameworks on the other platforms that we have as well. So our intention is to move over and use the Windows Media Framework on Windows, and we'll experiment with something on Linux. We do have a little bit of an issue on Linux in that there are licensing problems with some of the, well, all of the audio and video player libraries as far as we're aware. So there are some question marks as to exactly how we manage that, given that we have a dual license and a commercial product on one hand. But that is essentially what we're planning to do for that. Okay. So the next question regarding the upcoming networking layer, can we expect to see current standards like SFTP out of the box when it's complete? Yes, absolutely. We'll support all of the current standards, all of that will be written in, and it will be very consistent cross-platform. All the little issues that you have at the moment with the networking layer sometimes falling over under certain conditions will be ironed out, and all of the modern protocols will be included in that version. Am I using a laptop for this Hangout? Yes, that's correct. Just scrolling through this list here to see if I can find more questions. I haven't quite figured out the ordering for the Hangout as yet. Okay, here we are. Well, 100% of text functions and properties make it into LiveCode 7. I've noticed one missing from the DP releases. Will there be any casualties that don't make it into the initial GM? Yes, they absolutely will. I'm not sure exactly which the casualty is, but all of those text functions will most certainly be included. If there is one missing specifically, then could you please go and bug report that, and we will take a look at it very quickly. I believe you said that the new Skia graphics library is implemented now. Do you have an estimate when developers can start taking advantages of the new features? We are doing a number of optimizations over the next few months. You probably need to give me a little bit more detail into exactly what the specific features are that you need. But the first place where you're going to get access to the new graphics library is in the new widgets architecture that we're producing at the moment. And widgets are a way of writing a control in a language that's a little bit like LiveCode, or very much like LiveCode, but they exist in their own layer, so they call directly into the engine. And that means that they don't sit in the message path, they don't get blocked when you move from card to card, there's no way to cause a widget to break or be unable to redraw, and they will also have access to all of the engine innards. One of the very first things that they're going to have access to is all of the various functions that we have available in Skia. So with a widget, you'll be able to start using some of the great things that are in there, including transforms and including subpixel positioning. And you'll be able to use those to write your own controls. So that'll be the first access that you get to some of those underlying features in Skia, that slightly lower level version of LiveCode that will let you access all of those features. And then over time, of course, we'll be moving the whole LiveCode product to expose all of those features. Okay, well, the graphics improvements to SVG include any SWF import capability. I'm not absolutely certain about that from the top of my head. As far as I understand, we are aiming to do SVG import and export. I'm not certain on that one, so I can get back to you with a bit more information on that if you drop me a line on it. Okay, next one. Are the new internet libraries going to be in the 8 release or an 8.x release? I think it's quite likely that the new internet libraries will make it into the 8 series. I think that's entirely plausible. We are still in the relatively early stages of planning exactly what's going to be in each release. So I can't say for certain. However, it is very high on the list of things that people want. And it is a much, much smaller project than the Unicode and Refactor project that we've just done. So we are hoping to fit those in as soon as we possibly can. What surprised me the most since LiveCode went open source? Gosh, that's a really interesting question. it's been great to see the input into the platform that we've had. The fact that people have been willing to get stuck into the source code as it stands even before we finish doing a lot of the refactoring and contribute a number of really useful things back. A few of those are really stand out for me, like we got 64-bit Linux support, admittedly not into the core build process yet, but certainly to a state where you could build it yourself. The increase in user base has been a huge positive. It's been great to see that happen. The sheer amount of effort it's taken to do the refactor project, I mean, I guess that's more a post-Kickstarter thing than a post-open source question. I hope that answers that. Okay. As a new designer, I really enjoy working on grids and guides in Photoshop. Is there a plan on including them in a future release? Yes, absolutely. We're intending to have grids and guides available in the new IDE. I have a stack that crashes in 7. I've spent a fair amount of time trying to find the problem. Every time I find some answers to nail it down, the crash keeps moving around. Would it be valuable to run the IDE in the VS IDE, or would you like the stack? Feel free to send us the stack. One of the things about, so one of the features of this global jam is that we do have a forum area where we have volunteers who are there to help you to reproduce a bug. Now, we do need to be able to reproduce a bug in order to fix it. There's just no way to fix a bug if we can't see where that bug is. But there are people there in that forum today and tomorrow who have volunteered to help to track down those bugs so that we can find them. So if you go on there and raise the question, then we'd be very happy to help. The other thing that's usually helpful, not always, but in many, many cases with a crash, is if there is a crash log, and do send us the log. Quite often, or at least half the time, it can be fixed just from that crash log without anything else. The questions are being ordered by the number of pluses they get from other users. That would make sense. So busy presenting, I didn't spot that. Oh, I see the beard. That's why the beard's at the top. It's got +8. Right. I'm just going to scroll down to see if there's any at the bottom that haven't been +1'd. Okay, so here's a question. With a wider width like 24-bit and sample rates like 96 and 192K be handled by the new AB package? I'm not absolutely certain about the answer to that. Certainly if it's supported in the current version of the media players on the various different operating systems we support, then the answer will be yes. The media player project is in multiple phases, and the first phase gives us access, or better access, to the most modern set of device platform-specific features around about that area. Now we do have a plan beyond that to implement our own entirely cross-platform, completely seamless multimedia playback, and that's a separate question, but that's definitely further off into the future and won't be until after all of the other goals and the platform-specific multimedia factors will be done. And you should be able to hook into that yourself a little bit better, certainly on the Mac, with the new platform APIs that we've included as a result of moving over to Cocoa. Okay, so SFTP, an often asked question, forgive me if it was answered earlier, but I'm going to see the feature soon. I really like not to communicate with plain text. Yes, I did answer that earlier. It will be part of the new networking library. We hear you loud and clear on that one. Okay, next question. Improvements are planned for encryption functions and new ciphers. I'm not aware of any specific plans for encryption functions, so I think if there's something that you need that isn't in there, then it would definitely be worth your while taking the time out to file an enhancement request and tell us both a little bit about what you need specifically and why you need it, as in tell us a little bit about the app that you're building so we can understand what you need there. Will there be an opportunity to use the old player object in 6.7 in a sort of backward compatibility mode for command parameters that can't be implemented in AV Foundation? I'm not entirely sure as to the answer on that. Just a second. Yes, so the answer is that we are going to attempt to make it as compatible as we possibly can first, and we've certainly not given up in making it fully compatible. If we get to a position where we find that there's something that we can't implement, then of course we can go and take another look at that, but the intention is to make it backward compatible entirely. Okay, just wait for a moment. I don't see any more questions. Oh, here we go. Okay, I've been looking at a few game ideas, but had a hard time dealing with graphic performance in live code with a lot of objects. Could you talk about the status of Box 2D and physics improvement from the Kickstarter? So in order to provide you with the physics engine, what has to happen is that the graphics architecture that we have has to be a lot faster and a lot more capable. And that means that there's a fair bit of work. Your question comes at a really good time. We've actually just moved a couple of engineers onto a project for graphics performance. And we will be looking at every single area that we can improve graphics, whether that's rendering on Retina displays, whether that's moving things into multiple layers, whatever we can do to make graphic performance faster. So if you have a specific example of a stack where you've got multiple objects moving, or maybe you prototyped it a few months ago and you're not still using it, but you remember it being slow, this is a really, really good time to get that to our team. We need as many real-world examples as we can possibly get our hands on. It really is very, very important, because we're making guesses at the moment as we're designing this project as to what things really matter. But if we could get a few more stacks, I know some of you have sent them in, but if you could send us a few more stacks, we would really, really appreciate it. This is exactly the sort of thing that we need to be able to enable. So if you can, it sounds like you, Rob, may even have a stack where it's not performing well enough. And if you just send those directly, it's to Ben, which is just ben@runrev.com. To be specific about the improvements, at the moment we're investigating moving the graphics rendering to use a multi-threaded approach, which means that it'll use all of the different cores rather than just a single core. And that should improve the rendering on any device which has got multiple cores. It will particularly help on Retina devices where there are 4 times the number of pixels, and that thus makes rendering on those devices slower. But it will also help with all the non-rendering stuff. And the other aspect is just to improve various ways in which the accelerated rendering feature works, and we've been playing around and looking at different ways to do it. This is an active project. It's not something that we have planned. It's something that we're doing right now. So if you could please send us as much stacks that don't perform properly, that would be an immense help. Okay. Can you tell us more about the Open Language Initiative, what it is and what it isn't? So Open Language is a project to allow you to expand the live code using the syntax that you've come to expect in terms of the full English-like sentences. And it's a way of extending the grammar and also taking all of the existing grammar that we have at the moment and moving it over so that it's all very clear. So instead of mobile pick photo, it might be take photo from front camera. Instead of calling it external with a number of parameters to move a map, it might be display map at coordinates x, y. And of course that map object itself could be written in the new widgets architecture in live code, which will have enough access to both the OS and the engine to be able to render the map, and then you'll be able to use Open Language to control it. So you'll be able to write an object like that without even having to use a C compiler or another language potentially. It's a large, wide-ranging project, Open Language. The re-architecture that we've done so far makes it possible, and therefore it is a lot less work than the work that we have done to bring it out. Okay, mobile ad provider Interactive seems to be a black hole. I can't get answers to any questions or the model used to pay developers. Could you shed some light on the pricing model, or is that typical for ad providers? I'm sorry if you haven't had a response from them. If you drop me an email after this, I can certainly follow up and try to find out why that is. They change their model from time to time, so I'm not absolutely certain from the top of my head what the model is. But if you're having difficulty getting information from them, then we would be very keen to sort that out for you. So if you drop us a line, we will definitely look into that. Any plans to provide a live code installer for desktop standalones for Mac and Windows? Richard, if you could possibly rephrase that question, I'm not entirely clear as to exactly what it is you're asking there. Do you have any data on the number of live code built apps in the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store or on Kindle? It'd be great if there's a page and runway where developers could announce new live code built apps. Yes, we are working in putting together a better experience so that people can find other live code built apps. That's one of the things that we've been talking about just over the last couple of weeks as it happens. Improving the developers area and the developer portal and finding ways to help get our community to share this kind of information. Yeah, indeed. And one of the issues in answering my question is that we don't have a centralized repository ourselves. So I have some idea as to the numbers, but I would like to have a better idea. And so when we get that portal together, it'd be great if we can go around and get everybody to submit their apps. Okay, I understand the importance of keeping backward compatibility, but don't you think this would hold back the progress of live code in certain aspects, for example, adopting modern media formats, adding WebGL as a layer, and so forth? Yeah, that's an excellent question. Getting the balance right between breaking things in order to produce something amazing and maintaining backward compatibility has been one of those difficult questions, and it comes up repeatedly. Our position on it is that backward compatibility is very important, and therefore it is important that, generally speaking, your stacks will go from a previous version to a new version, and they will continue to work. So the way that we, at the same time, we see it as very important as being able to round out the feature set, modernize it, replace paradigms that are maybe outdated or outmoded or have been replaced by something better in another environment or another tool. So the way that we are looking to address that is at the point where we move to widgets and at the point where we move to open language. We've got two massive opportunities there for us to both maintain backward compatibility but also to do something entirely new. What I mean by that is that the open language parser will be able to run alongside the existing parser. So your script, you won't be able to mix the two in the same script, but you'll be able to mix script within your projects. And that means that you'll be able to go from running your code in an old environment to moving forward to the new syntax whenever you're ready to do that. So I'm not going to force you. But in the new open language parser, we can clean up all of the little issues that have built up over the years, the ways where functions, some of them return a value, some of them return in the results. There are things that just do things that are unexpected. And all of those things trip up new users and they make it harder for you to write software quickly and consistently, and yet changing any one of them will cause many apps out there to break. So by switching over, we have an opportunity to get it right, to clean all of this syntax up, to make the parser behave in a way that we would really like it to behave. But you can continue to use the old parser for as long as you want, so we're not breaking anybody's stack. It's just a question of you can move forward when you're ready. Widgets is the same opportunity when it comes to actually rendering objects. The old objects are still there, you'll still be able to drag them out, you'll still be able to use them, they have all of the same behaviors, whether those are good or bad, but widgets are brand new, they're fresh, they're rewritten from scratch. And so a button will not be overloaded to be multiple different things. It won't be a button and a checkbox, it'll just be a button, and there'll be another one that is a checkbox. Group will not be the only way of putting controls together. We'll have a container, various different types of container objects that allow you to do certain types of layout and are a lot more intuitive. That doesn't mean you have to stop using groups, that doesn't mean you have to stop using your existing objects, it just means that when you're ready, you can move forward to something that's fresh, modern, and has all of these issues ironed out. So that's how we're dealing with the backward compatibility. It's almost, it's not quite as clean cut as Apple's classic box versus their OS X box, but it's along the same sorts of lines, and it will come in progressively as we get those engineering tasks done. The effort required to fuel so many developers' needs and desires while managing multiple live code releases is huge. How are you holding up? Do you have an open tab at the local pub? Scott, I really do appreciate that. That's a nice question. It's a very, very intense period for all of us, for me in particular. It is now 7 o'clock on Friday. I would definitely like a whiskey right now. That would be wonderful. We are all holding up, and I'm certainly holding up, but it is one of the most intense periods that I've had, and it is a question of trying to pace yourself and get enough downtime so that you're fresh and focused throughout the course of each week and each day as it comes up. So yeah, holding up fine, but it's intense as you might expect. Thanks very much for that question. Okay. When will Open Language be ready? Thanks, Max, for that. Unfortunately, I don't know the answer to that. I know that, relatively speaking, it's a smaller project compared to the projects that we've already done. I know that we're pushing very, very hard to produce the themes and widget stuff, and therefore themes and widgets will be next, and that's going to be version 8. So whether Open Language will be part of the 8 series or whether that will be 9, I don't know. But that's the sequence in terms of the big projects. We're finishing the refactor, then we're doing the themes and widget stuff, which is one project that kind of overlaps into 2 areas, and then we're delivering Open Language. Some of the Open Language, some of the very basic Open Language technology might be seen beforehand in part of the widgets project, and that will be an opportunity for you to maybe start using some of those features. Hopefully we will be able to start bringing the developer previews many, many months before we get to the point of actually shipping the finished software. Yeah, indeed, and to expand on that, the probability, I don't know for certain, but I think it's quite likely that there'll be a situation where we're testing the 8 series with themes and widgets, but in the same way that we currently have a 6.7 on the go and a 7 on the go, we may well get to the point where we start having the DPs for the Open Language project appear around about the same sort of time. We'll just see how the projects go. Okay, so I'll look into more questions. Okay, not a question, but I noticed there are bugs that only show up when using a Mac with Retina display. Should Retina be added to the QA as an option to select? I will suggest that. That doesn't seem like a bad idea to me. I will see if, yeah, seems like a good idea. Okay, next question here. Would you be willing to set up a subform that streams or shows the list server mailing activity so that people can search for things in one place? It's funny that you should ask that, because this very week we had a chat between our tech guys and our web development guys talking about how to design a new developer portal that does exactly that. The idea is that it pulls together all of the different resources that there are in LiveCode. So you'll be able to go to a single page, and there'll be a stream which shows the latest forum posts, the latest list posts, the latest Stack Overview posts, the latest lessons, all of that stuff in a single place. And over time, we'll gradually expand that portal so that you can bring more and more content in, because it is very much spread out. All of the different lessons and guides and all of that kind of information is in one place. Rev Online is another place. The forums are somewhere else. And there's so much activity going on in the community, but sometimes you don't realize that because you have to go into each of these individual places to find it. So it's an active project, weeks, not months. I can't tell you exactly when, but it's ongoing at the moment. Okay, so can you comment a bit more on the relationship between these very cool sounding new widgets versus plugins versus externals? Okay, so a widget is something that's written in a live code-like language that has access to some of the engine innards, like the Skia library, the rendering library, accelerated rendering, all of that kind of stuff. A plugin is something that you install into the IDE, and an external is something that you write in a lower level language to give you functionality that you can't already get. Now, of course, the new widgets architecture will blur the line between live code and the operating system a lot more. So the number of times that you're going to need to actually use an external is going to go down significantly because you will be able to go out and access those aspects of the OS that you need. We have to provide that access to ourselves so that we can render the theming code and we can render objects with the correct appearance and pull in OS settings and all the rest of it. So the need for externals will go down. And then, of course, the line between externals and live code will blur because externals will get syntax from open language. So instead of importing a map external and then having to use function syntax, the syntax will come in to the product along with the external. And so everything will feel a lot more like live code in that respect. How will the new IDE be better and when? That's two questions. Great questions, thanks for those. So the new IDE is better both from the perspective of usability but also from the perspective of architecture. We see it as our responsibility to provide a framework that makes it as easy as possible for our community to build any type of IDE component that plugs in that can get switched to another component, where the components don't tread on each other and provide very easy access to the data in the live code project. In order to do that, the IDE needs to be running in a separate process or some sort of architecture where it is separated out entirely from the user code. And that will also allow us to fix various things like the debugger, which has an issue whereby, for example, if you have selected text in a field and you run some code and step into the debugger will change the field selection, and therefore you will not be able to necessarily debug something that's using some of the field functions. So that will go away because the debugger will run in a separate process, and indeed the whole IDE will run in a separate process. That also means that the IDE will be able to do things like it'll be able to pause a title loop by pressing a pause button, for example. But along with that, what we have to do is we have to produce an architecture that lets the IDE communicate clearly with all of the different user projects. It's very easy for you to hook things into, and easy for you to not have to worry too much about the various different details that underlie everything. So that is one of the ways that the IDE would be better. And then the other way, of course, is that a lot of the components that have been designed in the IDE are a little bit old. They could do with a redesign and a reimagining in terms of the way that they lay out and the way that they look. And we need to be able to drag out the new widgets. You need to be able to install widgets very easily into the main kind of repository within the IDE or into the whatever the equivalent to the tools palette will be. So there are these various things that will need to be done. When? I don't know exactly when it will be. Certainly making incremental improvements there will be some improvements to it in 8. I don't know how deep those improvements will be yet. But there'll definitely be some movement forward in that we have to move the IDE forward for version 8 in order to support the widgets and being able to property edit and inspect those and do the new layout stuff that comes as a result of being able to do that. Okay, well, the live code server editor on Rev Editor with the debugging feature ever make it come back? Yes, we have somebody working on that, as I understand it, on and off at the moment. So hopefully we'll have something working with the new servers fairly soon. How responsive are the Skia developer team about bugs reported by RunRev while using their library? Not entirely sure as to if we reported any bugs to the Skia team. I don't believe that we have reported very much. I'm not totally sure about the answer. Maybe somebody upstairs has done that, but I don't know the answer to that, I'm afraid. Yeah, apparently you have to fix the bugs yourself. That's what they expect. Okay. LiveCode 6.6 has the new player incorporated, but LiveCode 7 does not. When will the new player be incorporated into LiveCode 7? Okay, so because 6.7 was a huge architectural change in implementing the first version of the Cocoa implementation, and because 7.0 was a huge big rewrite in terms of getting the engine refactor, we chose to do those separately because it would be difficult to debug when a regression occurs as to whether or not it's a bug in one or other component within the rewrite. Now, it won't be possible for us to ship 7 until it has incorporated all of 6.7, because of course 7 is a larger version number than 6.7. But when we get to the release candidate stage, that's probably the stage where we'll start fusing those two releases together. Tools that user experience professionals use are frankly ugly when you're doing scripting. They usually need to rapidly e.g. Azure, they usually need to rapidly prototype. So LiveCode seems like a perfect fit. Have you reached out to the user experience community and shown them LiveCode? We have from time to time, and we do reach out regularly to other communities out there. I think that's something that we can do a bit more of when our own user experiences and the redesign that we're working on completed. Regarding the new Skia library, have you checked out performance and features against any competitors? We certainly look at the competitive feature set when designing the graphics features that we're trying to include. And I know that the tech guys undertook a fairly extensive comparison of the different libraries that are out there before adopting Skia. I'm not sure we've done a huge amount beyond that, apart from what I was saying earlier about trying very hard to optimize our overall performance and make more of those features available. If you've got a more specific feature in mind, then feel free to post that in here. So many releases in the pipeline, it would be helpful for me to be able to search by bugs by release. Is this possible? I believe that there is a search option, an advanced search, which does allow you to search by release. I know I certainly have access to it. I'm not 100% certain if you have access to that or not. Maybe somebody else here knows the answer to that. But I think that you do. I'm not absolutely certain. Yes is the answer that I've just been presented with. So yes, you should be able to go in and use the advanced search to choose the target milestone, and then you'll be able to see which release. With so many initiatives to introduce children to coding both in and out of school, are there any plans to make LiveCode more visible and get more attention as a serious language? I think that probably is the description of my job. We're very interested indeed in doing that and getting LiveCode more visible. And it's something that it would be great if you guys can help us with as much as possible. Please do evangelize LiveCode on every occasion that you can, and try and show off some of the great things that have been done. We have quite a number of ideas about how to do better on that, some of which relate to our strategy for open language and for themes. But if there's any specific areas where there are obvious fits for LiveCode, then please do pitch us in those places, or suggest to us, or tell us what we need, and we'll be very happy to help out there. Okay, does anybody have any more questions? We can keep going for a few more minutes. We started a bit late, so I don't mind. I'll pause for a moment just to see if anybody has anything else that they would like to ask. While I'm waiting, I'll remind everybody that there is a big day of pushing on bugs over the course of tomorrow, so do feel free to submit your bugs or work in the forum to get people to help you to replicate the issues that you may be encountering. And Richard is doing a hangout tomorrow. It will be starting at the same time as the hangout that we had today. It's it's an hour earlier. It's starting at 5 p.m. so it's an hour earlier than the hangout started today, plus a further half hour earlier, because I'm sure Richard won't run into any of the technical issues that we ran into today. So 9 a.m. PST tomorrow. Okay, so setting the font size in mobile native fields is inconsistent between pixeled entities and platforms. Is there any concise write-up on how to calculate font size versus field height? I'm not aware of any answer to that. It shouldn't, as far as I understand it, be inconsistent. So if you are finding some inconsistencies, then probably the best thing to do is to bug report, and then we can assess whether or not that is a bug or if that is something that we should be addressing, because our goal is to make these things very consistent between different platforms, irrespective of the pixeled entities. So please let us know if you're having an issue there, and hopefully it's something we can address. And if there's some really good reason for us not to address it, then we'll let you know at that point and write out what it is that you should be doing about it. Are there any plans to put LiveCode to more platforms? One can deploy apps to more platforms. Will that be easier to do with LiveCode 7? It certainly is a bit easier to do with LiveCode 7. The platforms that we have on the list are including an ARM Linux build frequently in the process and supporting, as a result of that, the Raspberry Pi, something that's very popular in education. There is a build of that was done for a few versions ago. At some point, we'll get to the point where we can start incorporating that into the main build tree. There is 64-bit Linux to do, and a lot of the work that we did, particularly in 6.7, is to bring in the new platform layer that does make it much easier for us to port to other platforms. At some point further down the line, we'll be looking at the Windows phone environment as well. And again, that is something that is now much easier to do as a result of the architectural work that we have done. Okay, so with regards to the LiveCode server as well as the ONREV editor, are there any plans with associated projects like plugins for TextMate, Coda 2, or Sublime Text, which more people may benefit from? I don't believe we've got any immediate plans in that area, but I think that that's an excellent idea, and I will feed that back into the planning process. Of course, LiveCode is open source, so if you want to produce any kind of plugin that works with any of those tools, then we would be more than delighted to feature it on our website if you submit that back as a community project. Here's my last time question. Is it time for whiskey yet? It must be very close to time for whiskey. It certainly feels like whiskey o'clock. It's 7:15, so I'm just going to see if there are any last questions, and then I'm going to wrap up. So I'm just going to take a moment just in case anybody's still posting something. Okay, well, it looks to me like we have got through all the questions, so I just want to say thank you again to everybody for all of your support, for taking the time to join us today, for taking the time to participate in our first ever Global Jam. It's definitely a format that we can see ourselves using again, just based on how it's gone so far. And I think, oh, I got one more question. I'll take that very quickly. Okay. Does LiveCode have a strategy for education? Yes, we do have a strategy for education. We've worked very hard here in Scotland to work with all of the various different local schools. We have around about a third of the high schools in Scotland now teaching programming as the language. And in any school where it's been in for more than a year, we've seen a doubling of uptake for computer science. We're working in England and Wales to achieve the same result. We're working with all of the various different local areas. It's a little bit more fragmented than in Scotland. In China, we are talking to the Chinese government about ways to spread programming, language education, maybe even combined with English language education. Both of them very popular topics over there. It's early days, but we're hopeful that we'll be able to make some very good traction there. And in the US, we're in process of looking for a partner to help us to spread the word in terms of getting some of our educational content and educational story out there. So that's something that we are looking at the moment. Okay, I am going to wrap it up there. So again, thank you very much indeed for joining us. I believe that the video for this will get posted to the YouTube account. Do join Richard tomorrow in his broadcast, and I'm going to leave it there. So thank you all very much indeed, wherever you are, for having joined us today, and good evening.